So next I want to talk about contract alarms, contract date alarms, how to set them, how they get processed. We'll also in this section talk about how to use action items, why they're useful, how to use your to-do list, and your action items calendar. Okay. All right, so back in this agreement, we have several date fields: effective date, expiration date, agreement date, purchase date. And depending on what you want to do, any of those date fields could have an alarm on it. Okay, so let's do it on the expiration date. So this contract is going to expire May 5th of 2016. Okay, two-year term. So I would like to be notified that this is going to expire, or maybe I need to notify someone else. So in order to do that, I'm going to set the alarm, and the button that you press to set the alarm is this one right here that looks like a calendar, but it's not really the calendar. First rule is that you have to have a date before you can click that button. You can't set, for example, I couldn't set an alarm yet on this one because it has a null date. The second rule is that the contract has to have been saved and have a contract ID before you can press that button. But both of those conditions have been met. So I'm going to open up the alarm details for the expiration date field for this contract. And I could set them differently for every contract, although you probably come up with a standard one. So before I go through all this, I actually have a slide that kind of breaks it down a little bit easier as a sample alarm. So this portion right up here, right underneath the title, is the schedule. When to send the first reminder, how many days in advance, when to send the follow-up reminders, if any, every X number of days, and how many times to send the email. So in my case, 3 times. You can use whatever schedule you like. The default schedule is 30 days in advance. What is it again? It's 30 every day, 3 times. So basically it gets sent 30 days ahead, 29 days ahead, and 28 days ahead because it goes out 3 times. You might not want that schedule. You may want to use some other schedule. Okay. I just realized that something. You're not seeing my slide. You're all watching his screen, so that's fine. We'll just go back to his screen. Karen. I'm so used to having the application and my slides on the same screen that it's thrown me here. Okay, so here's the standard schedule, but let's change it. Have you thought about either Brad or Shalene? Is there a different reminder schedule that you've come up with that works for you, or haven't you really done much with this yet?
I've set a few that 90 days out, depending on what the contract would be, obviously, but 90 days out, and then reminding you once. You could set the reminder every week for the 4 weeks or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But I've changed a few of them just.
Yeah.
How about you,
go
Shalene?
90 days out. I go 90 days out, and I usually set it every 20 days up to 3 times.
Okay.
But that way I get, sometimes it just takes a while to process my contracts or renewals.
Right.
So 20 days better for me.
Yeah, you want to give it a good, this is the key. This is the first reminder right here. How many days in advance? That's, if you know you're going to need a while to process them, you want to make sure that's long enough for you too. Okay, so we'll use that as an example. But again, you can put in whatever you want. By default, it will want to create an action item, and it will give that action item a title of expiration date. And that's fine. You can let that default to that. The next is an email template. So I noticed as I was looking through some of the existing email templates, there's already a couple in there. Just the generic contract expiration notice. There's an equipment lease expiration email, and there's a term renewal email, right? So I'll see what this one looks like. Pretty generic. Please be notified that contract. And this right here where it says $ contract ID $, that's a merge field. So when this particular email goes out, it'll say contract 404, and for company it'll say Howe Industries is due to expire on expiration date. Please take any necessary action. So that's your message. So that you don't have to type this over and over again. Email templates have been set up for you. Now those will be set up by the system administrator, and you'll just select an appropriate template from the drop-down. So we'll use that one. It also will default to, let's see who owns this contract here. Okay, Brad is the owner of the contract. And it's also, I think it's more the logged in user. It defaults to the logged in user. So this is the person who's going to get notified. Now that may not be what you want. You can change who gets notified. You can either type in that field, or better yet, you can click the button and select who you want to notify, and it can be more than one person. Okay. You can also send notices to non-users, by the way, just in case you ever want to do that. You can type their email address, or you can pull their email addresses from contacts by selecting contacts. This is similar to what I did when I just sent a document by email. You can send it to the external, to the vendor if you want to, or you can go searching for our company and send it to one or more contacts in your system. But if you're actually sending it to another user, the preferable way is to pick their name out of this list. So that would be the first thing you want to do if they're in the list. And then if they're not in the list, then you can go find their email in contacts. Okay, so we're going to send this to Brad. And that's basically all there is to it. You're just going to click OK, and the alarm is set. And the little green dot there, it's really a little check mark, I think, tells me that the alarm is set. But of course, this is not going to go off until 2016, early in the year, 90 days before that date. So I'm going to set it and forget it, and that's all I really have to do. Now, if my expiration date were closer to now, I'm going to fake this out by coming back. Let's say my expiration date was sometime in within the next 30 days, like the end of June. Then you're going to see your alarm indicator light turn red. So that just tells you that you are within the email notice period, the 90-day prior for that particular contract. Okay. These alarms go out typically once per day at the first login of the day. And I say typically because it is possible to send alarms manually multiple times a day, but no one ever bothers to do that. I do it, in training. But the way it works is it's the first person who accesses the database that day will trigger a query. It's called, I'm going to show you, this is how you can run it manually, the date email alarm query. So this query goes to the database and it looks to see if there are any emails, any email notifications that need to go out today, and it generates the emails, auto-populates any of the merge fields that are in there, like the contract number, the company name, or the dates, and sends them off to the proper recipients. It doesn't matter who logs in. It doesn't matter whether or not you own any contracts or you're getting any alarms that day. It's just the first person who does it, it happens to run. So it's already run today since someone's logged in. I'm going to go ahead and run it manually so you can see what happens. See these messages down at the bottom left, the red messages? That shows me that emails are being generated. And it just sent one email alert, and it was successful. So if you are the first person who logs in, if you're an early bird, you may see this. You'll have to wait, by the way, as those messages go out. Depending on how many messages have to go out that day, you may be waiting for a couple minutes, usually not too long, but it all depends. But when it's done, it will pop this little window up, and you can simply close it. If, however, you notice that there's some that failed, you might want to report that to the system administrator, that some alerts didn't go out. The system administrator can then go and look at the email log and try to determine what didn't go out and why. Sometimes it's just a case of an incorrect email address. Okay, so Brad, did you get that email? Brad?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to get my email.
I'm trying to see.
The computer is just timing out on me for some reason.
Oh, okay. Well, we can look at it. We can also look at it up here. Let's go up to the email manager. He'll get it in his regular email, but it just seems to, yeah, it seems to have died, huh? I'm clicking and nothing's happening. Oh, here it comes. Okay, so again, Brad you wouldn't normally look for it here, but you know, this is what it looks like.
I do see
right
it.
there. Yeah. So he got that in his regular inbox as well. Okay. So that's the alerts. Setting them is pretty simple. Oh, and one other thing is that the email, who did that email come from, Brad? Did it come from the system? Who was the sender of that email?
Contract. Let me see. It's nothing away here.
It's kind of a trick question.
It says.
Yeah, what do you know? It came from you. You know why it came from you? It's because you're the owner of the contract. And so the default way to process these notices is that they'll always come from the email account associated with the contract owner. Now, there's another way to set up your system, but right now that's the way it works. They come from the owner of the contract. So you'll get an email message from the owner, and you can send them. I mean, send them to yourself. That's fine. So you get a message from yourself saying, you know, this contract is going to expire or whatever.
Karen, can we go back into the alarm screen? Does it tell you there once you get an email has been sent, how many has been sent? Like if we have 3 set up, it says you've notified. Yeah. Time.
Right here. Okay. Yep, so if you're curious, you can always go back into an alarm and you can see how many times it's been emailed. What the email status is, now the status is going to be incomplete until it's gone out the full number of times up here. So it's got to go out 2 more times based on my schedule. Then this will become complete. This is the last time and date that it was emailed. Okay. So we basically do nothing until, you know, it goes out 2 more times, and then it just stops going out. It just turns itself off, just like any alarm. It'll just turn itself off. Now, in the meantime, let's now talk about another related topic. It's not exactly the same, but it's action items, because at the same time the system sent the email, we asked it to create an action item. That will appear as a record on the Action Items tab, and here it is. It's called, well, expiration date is the title of it. The action type is a code that stands for expiration date, ALM, EXP dates, expiration date alarm. So the system automatically creates that. It puts a due date on it of your date field. Whatever your date field said, that'll be the due date of the action item. The assigned to user is the user who gets the alarm. So Brad got the email, so he's the assigned to person for this. And so this information, you probably won't come to this tab very often, if ever, but the reason for having this is so that the to-do list gets populated. So we're now going to take a look at a to-do list. Okay, now this one here is the untouched generic to-do list. And I might recommend that you have, that you and Alex maybe get your heads together and maybe customize this a little bit, because this is maybe tracking actions that you're not using at your site. It was just put together as a sample. But right here, this top one is relevant to you. How many expiring contracts there are? There are 2 that are assigned to Brad. So it's important to note that you're not seeing all the expiring contracts in the system necessarily, only the ones that you are the assigned to person. You can click that little plus sign, that's called drilling down, and it'll tell you which 2 contracts are expiring. So there's the one that we just generated the email for, How Industries. And a little bit of information is given. These are customizable, as I said, so when this one is giving you the contract category, the current status of the contract, and the due date on that action, or it's actually the expiration date. Okay, so this is interesting. This is also telling us that your contract with us expired on May 1st, I guess. So.
You're gonna shut us off, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're not. We're not. Okay, but yeah. Well, that's what the to-do lists are helpful for. It's just kind of gathering together all those, because of course you're going to get an email, but how many emails do we get a day? Millions of them. So this is another way for you to track your key dates right here on a to-do list. And it just needs to be, if you're going to start using dates other than the expiration date field, you just need to have these customized a little bit, and that's a project that's kind of ongoing, maybe getting rid of some of these other ones. This can also be helpful too, because as you log in, you can go here directly, or you can go to your dashboard. I don't know if we didn't really talk too much about dashboard, but the to-do list is also on the dashboard, and you can use that as a way to yeah, so here's the MEMIC dashboard. So same list appears here. You can use this to access that contract. So you log in one day and you say, okay, what's coming up, what's expiring, and you see your list, and you can double click on any one of these rows. Let's go back to let's go to this one. I want to check this out, so I'm going to double click on it, and it will take me to that contract record. And there it is, the contract Logix record. The action items can also be seen on a calendar, by the way. I don't know how many people actually use this, but if you click the calendar icon, it'll bring up an action items calendar. So there you can see May 1st, the contract Logix expiration. You can here's a bunch of things that are expiring. Other actions here. So you can look at a calendar, daily, weekly, monthly, action items calendar. And you can actually jump from those calendar items to the records as well. It's not, you don't double click, you right click on it and go to it. But anyhow, that's basically what happens with those alerts. Now, because with your to-do list, because there'll be things on there, once you've addressed that, once you've taken care of that particular contract, if you want to get it off your list, you can use the action status screen field down here, because it's mostly, usually these are only reporting on incomplete tasks or to-dos, right? So once I've done what I need to do with that, I can change the status, oops, to complete. And all that will do is drop it off my list, and it completes the action item over on the Action Items tab. So I'll go ahead and save that. Now if I go back to the How Contracts, I think it was the first one. you see how the status has been completed for you. So again, it's rarely necessary to actually come to the Action Items tab. It's sitting there. You can review it if you want, but if you simply want to complete your to-dos, you can do it from the to-do list itself or from the dashboard. But interestingly enough, I'm going to go back to the alarm itself. What's the status of the alarm? Well, the alarm is still incomplete. So although they start out being created at the same time, the first notice and the action item, they then become independent elements. You can complete your action item, but in 20 days, Brad is going to get another notice because this is not complete. Okay. Now you can fake it out, make it complete by changing the number of times and saving. And so if I change the number of times to 1 and saved it, it would complete this because it would have fulfilled its mission to send emails. Or you can just let the emails run through and just ignore them. And then what happens if once you review this contract and it's going to expire at the end of June and we say, yep, we're done with how. We're not going to renew at all. So we do want to expire it. In that case, you change the status of the contract. Okay? And if you do that, let's say I change it to expired and I save. Oh, okay. You've got your system set up a little differently. Most systems, when you do that, it will also turn off alarms. But obviously you've customized yours a little bit differently. That's fine. So I don't know if you want to do that or not. But let's just ignore that. And then if you want to, you can also reset the dates and keep the alarm going. That's a little bit trickier, but let's say we are going to renew this contract. We want to keep the same contract record. You can change the dates. So let's say we'll renew for another year. And the little alarm button will, all the alarm details stay with the contract, it just goes green. However, there is one little thing that I don't think a lot of people understand or pay attention to. We didn't modify anything in here, which is fine, but the email's already gone out one time, which means next year it'll still go out, but only 2 times. So if you do want to do this and you reset your date forward, you want to keep the alarm going next year or 2 years from now, and you don't get a little pop-up that says it's going to reset the alarm for you, you better reset it manually and just come into the alarm and hit reset. It'll reset the times emailed back to 0, which is proper for next year. And then you'll be good to go. Then just click OK. You don't have to do that if you let all the 3 emails this year go through. And then you can change the date and the system will set it for you, reset it for you. But if you reset the date before the 3 emails go out, you have to reset it manually. It's just one of the little quirks of the system. Or you could just start from scratch. One other thing you can do is if you remove a date, so if you go in here and set the date to null, by the way, you right-click to do that, it takes all the alarm info off that. And then you can start from scratch again. Put in the date. Save it, and go in and set up a brand new alarm. Okay. And what I often do is I recommend to customers that they might think about setting up a default alarm that everybody can use as their starting point. So maybe this becomes your default for that particular contract category. You can click set. I'm not going to do it because I don't know if this is really what you want as your defaults. Although if you set a new default, then it will override the old default. But if I click this button, then none of you will have to think about the schedule, the template, or the user to notify. This part, however, you might want to change each time. So you want to examine that each time you set an alert. Okay. You still have to open the window. I think sometimes people think that if you set a default that the alarms are going to go out without you doing a single thing. You do have to still click the but basically you just click the button. It fills in all the fields based on the default, and then you click OK, and you're done. So it's pretty fast. The defaults, by the way, apply to all contracts that use the same view. And again, I'm not quite sure. You have to go and see how many different views you have. You'd think it would be on the category, but it's not necessarily on the category if you've got multiple categories that use the same view. Remember, view is how the screen looks. So perhaps a little more information is going to need to be given to the folks in this class after some of the reconfiguration, if there is any reconfiguration, about what default alarms are in there, if any. You don't have to use it.
Can I ask a couple quick questions, Karen?
Sure.
Is there a way to see which contracts don't have alarms? Because it's easy when you get distracted, you're in the middle of putting a contract, and you don't know if you forgot to set the alarm. So
There actually is. There actually is, and this tool can be fairly dangerous. I mean, one part of it is very simple. If you try to set alarms this way, I'm going to kind of steer you away from that. But yeah, there is a tool. You see this alarms icon right up here? What you want to do is select a whole bunch of contracts. So, for example, let's find all of your contracts. Is that you? Was that Shalene?
Me. That's me. Yeah.
I don't know your voices that well, but I had a feeling it was you. All right, so then you can multi-select, and to do that you can do, well, I'm just going to take a bunch like that. So shift click. Once you've done that, you can press the alarms button, alarm analysis. Right over here, and I think that this display is a little bit hard to read, but this tells you the number of unset alarms and all the alarms. Okay, so we're not setting alarms on effective date. It's 17 are unset of 17 dates. Right. But for expiration date, 2 of them are unset out of 18. You can click this little plus sign. All right, so contract 381 and 384 do not have alarms set, even though there is a date in the expiration date fields.
Okay, that is really helpful.
Yeah, I would, unless you really know what you're doing, I would stay away from actually updating. You can set alarms through this screen either, but this at least
the contract.
Yeah, I would because it'll do a batch. But yeah, that'll tell you exactly which contracts. And I think, let me see if this will go to that contract. It does. Right-click on it, and you can go right to the contract.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's a fairly new feature. Haven't been teaching it in the basics class because there's just so much in basics. But yeah, that'll allow you to set the alarm.
Okay.
And did you have another question?
Well, I had one comment. I just had noticed that when you I guess you had renewed the contract per se with the Howe Industries, and you went in and just changed the expiration date and reset your alarms. Typically, I do it pretty differently. I expire the contract and then copy it and to create another one because usually for me some of the information has changed.
Right, I agree. I agree. I
another
think
way
that's
to
probably the way to do it. When I tried to expire the contract, it didn't turn off the alarms. Do you know why that's doing that? Is that
I don't know.
okay? Well, I know why. I'll tell you why. Let me go into the lookup painter. This is for those of the rest of you in the class. Don't worry about this, but I want to tell them while I'm here and seeing it. There's a table called contract status, and expired says alarms are enabled, which I don't agree with. I think it should say no, because what would happen is if you do expire the contract, it would turn off any notices that are going out for that contract. Why would you want to get an email in 6 months? Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah, could change it.
I can. I will. There we go. So now, if you change the status of a contract to expired, it automatically will turn off any alarms that are linked to that contract. And that's how it should have been. That must have just got set, by mistake, somebody poking around in there.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions about this or anything else that we covered today or on Monday? Anything at all on Contract Logix? We'll open it up to questions.
I think as everybody starts using it, I'm sure you'll have questions.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be pounding you with questions, whoever's managing this. Yeah. Okay. All right then. Then that's it for today. I guess we'll end the training session. You can stop the recording, Brad, and I want to thank everybody for